Hello and welcome everyone to this week's BFG review. As always, I want to thank anyone who's watched my previous videos and remind everyone to please like, share, and subscribe because it really does help grow the channel. Now, with that out of the way, on to this week's film, which is Knives Out. Directed by Rian Johnson and starring Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, Ana de Armas, Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Shannon, Don Johnson, Toni Collette, Lakeith Stanfield, Catherine Langford, Noah Segan, and Christopher Plummer.
This movie follows the detective investigating the death of a patriarch of an eccentric and combative family. And we will keep it simple at that as to not ruin any of the storyline.
Yep, just a heads up, we are going to do our best to avoid any and all spoilers because this is a film, I even think more than Endgame itself, that you want to go into knowing as little as possible. I will say you can watch the trailers because they don't really spoil anything. Oh, and also, I'm the only one who saw this film this week. Katie just wanted to interview me about the film, so we're going to try that.
Yes, I am not good with violent things, and there was the potential for this one to be a bit violent, so I'm going to go see it with Derek in a couple weeks.
Just a heads up, it's really good. After I got out of the film, I called her and I said, babe, you got to go see this film. You can definitely watch it. I told her not to look up the synopsis, not to spoil herself because she has to go see this movie because it really is that good. It's honestly one of my favorite films of the year, and I honestly cannot wait to go see it again.
So I think for this particular review, we're going to skip your thoughts on the story just to keep from spoiling anything, and we're going to go right to the characters.
Can I say one thing on the story?
Maybe.
Just one thing, and I'll try my best to not spoil anything, and if I do, I'll obviously edit it out. But this story is M. Night Shyamalan's dream come true. There are so many twists and turns, and I know that's a cliche, but it's so true about this film. There's 3 separate times where I'm like, I got it, I figured it out, and then one thing happens and you're like, oh crap. And then even at the very end, I'm like, oh, now I got it. But again, they flip it and you're like, wait, what? No, huh? Sorry, that's all I'm going to say about the story.
Yeah.
It is a roller coaster. Sorry, okay.
So we'll start with the characters, and I'm going to ask you about someone who I'm assuming you were watching very, very intently in this movie. How did you think Chris Evans did coming off of his role as Captain America in this new film?
I've always been a fan of Chris Evans. Honestly, the first time I saw him wasn't even in a Captain America or MCU film. I was introduced to Chris Evans in his amazing performance in Not Another Teen Movie. It was great, and then he became Johnny Storm in the Fantastic Four films, and I think there's always a lot of pressure for these MCU actors now to see what they're going to be doing after Endgame, and if especially the main 3, you kind of hope they do well. And honestly, Chris Evans was my favorite character in the film. He's not used as much as I thought he was going to be, especially based on the trailers, but every second he's on screen, he's hilarious. He's this cocky, just jackass of a character, but you'll find that a lot of the family is, but he just wears it on his sleeve. He just lets it out there, while the others try to act all noble and they're all holier than thou kind of thing.
And this is a cast full of big names with Toni Collette, Jamie Lee Curtis, Daniel Craig. All those people are pretty well-known household names. Who are some other standouts in the cast except for Chris Evans?
Daniel Craig. Honestly, I'm not sure if everyone will be able to get over his accent because it is a very rich and southern drawl type of accent. But he pulls it off, and it honestly makes everything he says either really interesting or really funny. And just to kind of go back to the story or the film overall, there's a lot of comedy in this film that I was not expecting. Rian Johnson is known for putting some decent comedy in his film. Sometimes it doesn't always work, and I'll say in this film there's a few that don't quite land, but most of the humor in this film is hysterical and just adds to the enjoyment of the film. So, more standouts. Tony Collette. Tony Collette was great.
She's always amazing.
Christopher Plummer, surprisingly enough. Again, not featured a lot, obviously, for obvious reasons. But what they do show of him, he's great. He's honestly really, really good. And also, Noah Segan. Noah Segan he's one of the detectives working on the case, working with Daniel Craig. And he's a super fanboy of Christopher Plummer's books in the film. And there's a lot of good humor, again, in that. So I'd say those are probably my biggest standouts.
And what about cinematography? The trailer had some really interesting angles, some really interesting choices, it looked like. What did you think about that?
Honestly, it's hard to notice the cinematography in this film. You're doing your best to pay attention to every detail in every corner of the screen and every word that the character says and how they say it, that the cinematography kind of just goes past your eyes, so to speak. I will say there are some really nice shots in it, especially the final shot. I'm not going to spoil it, but the final shot is so perfect on its framing that it just leaves you with a sense of satisfaction. But other than that, like, it's competently shot. It's not like badly shot, but I wouldn't say it's mind blowing the way the visuals are. Not like Rian Johnson's other film that I really love, The Last Jedi. The cinematography in that I thought at times was breathtaking. And there might have been one or two shots that really stood out, but not so much overall.
So basically, the director allowed them to focus more on the characters and the writing than actually the cinematography.
And again, I don't think the cinematography is the most important thing in this film. It's shot well. I'm not saying it's shot poorly, but it's not over the top cinematography like you will find in more epic stories. Most of this story takes place in the confines of that house.
Also, this film, the way it's been promoted and the way that people are talking about it, it sounds like it could potentially be a contender for some of the bigger prizes in Hollywood, potentially like a Golden Globe. What do you think about that?
This might get like the Screen Actors Guild Award of Best Cast, because it's such a big cast and everyone gives an amazing performance. I could see maybe a Best Screenplay nomination for an Oscar. I could see a lot of nominations or wins for Golden Globes. Those are usually a little easier to get.
They kind of split into two categories.
Yeah. This definitely would be a Best Comedy for a Golden Globe. One of those, Best Comedy / musical, even though it's not a musical, whatever. But I would definitely say it does have some Oscar chances. I would think a couple, maybe not any of the performances. I don't think any of them are big enough or are going to be noticed by Oscar voters. But I could see maybe like a screenplay or directing nomination or win. I could definitely see that.
Anything else you want to talk about?
I honestly don't know.
It's hard to figure it out.
It's hard to figure out what can I say about the film without spoiling the film. And again, I don't want to spoil it. I'll just kind of reiterate most of my thoughts on that. It's an amazing film. It's exactly as the trailer says. It's a classic whodunit film, and you think you find out who done it, but you don't know who done it. And it's honestly a film that you should go see as soon as possible. Honestly, go see it in a theater. Like, I know there's a lot of people like, I can just wait. Like, don't wait. Don't risk being spoiled for this movie because it is such a good film. And I am excited to go see it again to see what it's like knowing the ending. Like, will I notice new details? That kind of gives it away. Like, in like one of the first shots or something. I don't know. But overall, it's just... Oh, I will say, I do have one critique that I want to bring up. Some of the dialogue is a little too modern. This was also an issue for me in The Last Jedi, which doesn't really make sense because it's a different galaxy, but some of the dialogue in this, like, this could have been almost a very timeless film, but like some of the dialogue, such as like weak sauce, or they reference Netflix a time or two, and stuff like that really, and there's a couple of political reference, subtle, not like straight out, but there's a couple of subtle political references that if weren't there or weren't as pronounced, I think this could have been a much more timeless film. But that's my only critique of the film, is that I wish those lines would have been tweaked. They could have been tweaked so easily. But now it's a very modern film, instead of like, it could be anywhere from like ranging from the 80s to the 2010s or something.
So what grade would you give it?
Oh, this gets an A+. Knives Out definitely gets an A+.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to go see it.
I'm excited to have you see it. I'm excited for anyone to go see it. So, those are my thoughts on the film. Let me know your thoughts on the film, as well as your thoughts on the drawing in the comment section down below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that bell notification icon to be notified anytime I put up a new video. Thanks everyone, and have a great day.